and welcome to CivilNet. Today we have the honor of Atom Egoyan joining us in studio. Atom, thank you very much for your time, for being here. We are collectively, as an organization at CivilNet and as a nation, enamored by you and Arsine. So we can't get enough of you, and we want to thank you for your time. You're here for a specific reason this year, the Golden Apricot. Talk about what your role is this year.
Sure. Well, it's the 10th anniversary, and I'm here first and foremost to welcome foreign guests who are coming to the festival, and also just take a moment to reflect on what an amazing event this has been. This has been 10 years of a festival that no one thought we could actually maintain. I mean, we keep forgetting what a difficult country it is to access for most people coming here for the first time, but once they're here, people love it. We've had so many people coming back from different places, filmmakers, critics, and they just really love the environment and the feeling of this festival, and the opportunity to watch amazing films. The selection is of a very high standard, and to really be at a festival where the emphasis is not on glamour and hype, but really on the quality of the films themselves and on the conversations and the discussions that are being brought to the table. And I'm just really proud. I've been involved with it from the very beginning. My film Ararat, I think, won the first prize, and soon after they asked me to be involved as a president, now honorary chairman, and I feel like very, very proud. You know, as an Armenian filmmaker, you know, you're always wondering what you could bring back. I think one of the first things Arsene and I did in the early 90s was we made a film here. It was the first film from outside that was ever shot in the country, a tiny movie called Calendar. And since that time, we've made this commitment to support in any way we can, not only the country, but specifically this festival. You know, that's what we've given our hearts to it, and it's just great that it's now in its 10th edition. And you know, this year we gave this very honorary large prize to Charles Aznavour, and that was an amazing moment. You know, on a Sunday night at the opening ceremony, they dug up this old documentary made in Soviet times of Charles Aznavour's first visit to Soviet Armenia. And in the documentary, you saw him performing in the same opera house. And you saw at one point the chandeliers, and I looked up and I thought, oh, it's the same chandeliers. We're in the same place, and here we are celebrating this event. And I got really choked up. And it was wonderful to introduce him and to introduce his film,
Shoot the Piano Player.
But I'll have to tell you that in the documentary, there's this moment where you see the plane arriving and landing in Yerevan sometime in the 60s, it must have been. And then there's this beautiful shot at the end of the plane taking off. And when I introduced Shoot the Piano Player, I was talking about this moment in the documentary and watching the plane taking off, and it made me think of Grunk. It made me think of, you know, this image we have of going away and coming back, and it really was a very strong evocation of what diaspora means. And it was a wonderful event to be able to knit that all together, and of course in the figure of Charles Aznavour, who I used in my film Ararat, and who actually was named Edward Soroyan after the character in Shoot the Piano Player. So a lot of things came together that night for me. It was really beautiful.
You had an incredible introduction that you'd composed before the presentation of the Thaler Award, and you specifically said that we will never know how much this man, Charles Aznavour, has contributed to us. Expand on that.
Well, you know, I said in the introduction that what does it mean to be the most famous Armenian in the world? What does it mean to be the person that everyone mentions when asked, you know, well, what have Armenians brought to the world in the past century? And of course it's Aznavour first and foremost. But I think that with being the most famous Armenian in the world, there are certain responsibilities, and he's handled that magnificently. You know, in terms of his commitment to this country, he's been here not only in the 60s at the height of his fame, but he was, you know, in the darkest days of this country during the terrible earthquake or the economic hardships. He was always here, and he was able to be so generous in terms of adding his celebrity, and I'm just in awe of him. You know, and shooting with him on Ararat, I was really nervous because, you know, what was he going to be like on set? So often when you meet people, they're disappointing, and he just was the sweetest person. I'll never forget, I went to meet him at the airport. I was alone, he was alone, he didn't have any entourage, and the first thing he wanted was a hot dog. And I thought, okay, he's pretty easy to handle, so I just give him hot dogs, and he was happy. He's really just a beautiful soul. And you see that in the music, of course. I mean, the music is a reflection of the person, and he is this incredible living presence that connects us to this whole tradition of troubadours. I said that night, you know, from Syed Nova to Frank Sinatra. You know, he's part of this amazing, illustrious line. So it's pretty special that we have this God, you know, who's about to turn 90 years old and who's ours.
Just as Aznavour has given of himself to us generously, you've been doing the same for the past few days. A lot of dialogue you're having with aspiring filmmakers, young people. What does that dialogue center around? What are you talking to them about?
I'm really trying to, first of all, there are amazing opportunities here to tell stories. I mean, I just think that, you know, with the new technologies that are available to us, you know, it's not like when I was starting to be a filmmaker where you needed, you know, considerable amounts of money, and you can really tell a story if you feel it strongly, if you're able to use the camera to express a fascination with something, and to not be afraid of unusual storytelling techniques, because ultimately that's what's going to define you. Like, so many people are making films, and we were talking about this the other day, you know, writing and blogging, and so the only way you're going to make a difference is not by slavishly imitating a film that is way beyond the means you have, but rather to find your own individual way. I mean, I fell into it kind of naturally because I didn't go to film school. I didn't really know film language, so I kind of created my own film language inadvertently, I'm realizing now. But I had these very unusual stories that I needed to tell, and I think sometimes people don't understand the power they have of being in this very, very specific space and using the things that we take for granted, but showing them to the world in a way that's fresh and unusual, and not trying to copy Hollywood style. You can't do that in Armenia. You just can't. You know, you can dream of it, but we don't have the infrastructure to support that. Now, that's not to say that we can't develop it eventually, and I think that there's definite things we should be considering. I think it's a little shocking that we don't have co-production treaties with the major European film centers like France and Germany, because I'm sure they would love nothing more than have co-production with Armenia, so that we're able to use those resources in a more specific way. We should be connected to like funds like Euroimage, which also would be able to help kickstart, you know, the industry here.
And that's something that the cultural ministry has to do?
It is really up to the Ministry of Culture to kind of pursue that. You know, I think it's about the Ministry of Culture here getting in touch with respective ministries in other countries and setting up those formal treaties. I'm not sure what the blocks have been, but it really is important, I think, in terms of being able to create a serious partnership.
And that would be an infusion of sorts to the film industry.
Yes. Here. I mean, in turn, we would be expected to step up, you know, to the plate as well. I mean, we would have to help develop crews, professional levels crews, which we have, but we really need to focus on that now. We have to focus on actual making sure that the standards here, not just in terms of the equipment, because we have the equipment now clearly, but just in terms of manpower, that we're able to service those crews. And those expectations, so that European filmmakers coming here don't have to bring their entire crew over, that we're able to, in a true co-production, the spirit of a co-production, be able to repay. We probably can't do it with funds. We can certainly do it with labor, and we can certainly do it with locations, and do it with first and foremost, I have to say, with our extraordinary musicians. We have amazing musicians here. We have an incredible orchestra, but we don't have the infrastructure as of this time to actually record a film score using the most advanced sort of Skype kind of you know, techniques of hooking into you know, wherever the post-production is being done. Anyway, these are all things that have to be considered very, very seriously. They are all. We have amazing human resources. This is a country that's full of talent, first and foremost. So to find a way of engaging that and giving people employment and making this a hub. I've been saying this for years. I mean, we should be able to record our soundtracks here.
There is some collaboration going on, all under the umbrella of Golden Apricot, the Directors Without Borders, Turkish, Armenian filmmakers communicating. What do you think their mission should be? What kind of dialogue should we be having as we approach the 100th anniversary of the genocide?
Well, we should be having all sorts of dialogue. I mean, I think everyone has a very specific dialogue they'd like to be having. I think that, you know, there is, it is a moment to really think about how do we empower ourselves with the idea that we have a place in Turkey. That, you know, I'm emotionally, I find it very difficult to go back. I mean, and yet if you were to talk to Arsene, I hope you do, she has very strong opinions about this, and she is coming from an even more nationalist place than I am, perhaps. But she has been spending a lot of time in Turkey. She was, you know, she was there for Abril Kasançors, you know, like in Istanbul, and commemorating it there. And that makes a lot of sense at a number of different levels to actually claim this as part of our land as well, in a physical way. But you can do that cinematically. You can certainly do that with a film camera. You could actually express this dialogue, and you can actually, the way I maybe did it with Calendar 20 years ago with Armenia and reclaiming that heritage. I think there's a way of doing that with Basburagan, you know, and being able to say that this is our as well. It's problematic for me, but that's just a personal issue, and I don't. It's one of the few things where I think my emotional side overtakes my intellectual side. So I have to get past it, I suppose. But it's very complex issues. Very complex issues. I mean, it's wonderful inviting Turkish filmmakers and producers here to Yerevan, and you know, having that dialogue. But it's God knows it's complex.
Our story is complex.
Our story is very complex. It's so unresolved. It's crazy. You know, and of course, you know, the way to think about it is, well, move on. You know, just, you know, move on. It's that scene in Ararat, you know, where the Turkish actor, you know, who's totally assimilated, says to Rafi, you know, listen, I mean, I'm sure terrible things happened, you know, but look, I got a bottle of champagne. Let's celebrate our friendship now. You know, like, forget about the past. And my God, that's tempting. But you know, it's just, as an Armenian, you also know you can't go there. I mean, if we forget about the past, you know it'll be forgotten. There's no clear record, and as long as it's being so vociferously denied, we have a problem. You know, it's a very aggressive policy. It's not all fuzzy and cozy and sentimental and warm. There's an active process of denial going on, and that's very aggravating. And it continues to taunt. You know, so. You know, Paul, we're not going to solve it on this interview, so...
But we can talk about Ararat and how it's had a screening here at the film festival. How do you feel about the movie now that 10 years have passed?
I'm really proud of this movie. I'm so thankful I made it. It was made in a rush because it had to be. The funds were there. I had a visionary producer, Robert Lantos, a Hungarian Jew, and you know, I asked him to, the Armenian Community Center was giving me an award, and they asked me to be introduced by someone I felt close to, so I asked Robert to introduce, this was around the time I was shooting Felicia's Journey, and he got up to the podium, and he did this crazy thing. He said, you know, as a Hungarian Jew, I've seen so many films made about the Holocaust, and they've informed and educated me. I've never seen a film about the Armenian genocide, and if Adam is ready to make this film, I will support it. And the whole audience stood on their feet, and they started cheering, and I went, oh my God, like what a... And then later on he told me, we have to do it in a year, because he had the funding, and it had to be done that year. So how do you do this? I mean, like, so I wrote this script, and I packed a lot of stuff into it, because I just felt this was the one shot I had. And I look at the film now, and I go, it is super crammed with ideas. And it's like overflowing with ideas, and there's probably way too many storylines. But I didn't really have time to take a break from it and kind of like edit. I just sort of shot it raw. And you feel that when you see the film, I think. But you also feel that there are some things that, you know, could have been edited or taken out. But look, it continues to provoke a real dialogue. There's been endless articles and papers written about it. I spent a week in Tel Aviv. There was a seminar on Ararat. I think it's unlike any other you know, film dealing with genocide, because it's really dealing with the transmission of trauma through denial. And I don't think any Jewish film has actually done that. Well, they can't, because their Holocaust hasn't been denied. You know, so it's very specific, but it's also. It's not a genocide film ultimately, you know. So maybe I disappointed Robert in that regard. I think he would have wanted to see a film that was just this film that Edward Soroyan's trying to make, the historic drama. But in reality, we didn't have the budget to make that film. We had the budget to do pieces of that movie, but we couldn't have done a whole costume drama in Canada, and we had to shoot it in Canada as well. So it was a flurry of activity. I look at it. I'm also very thankful that I was naive. At that point, I didn't understand the full extent of the Turkish denial. I thought that the film could actually be a bit of an olive branch for a dialogue. And when it met the response that it did in Turkey with the nationalists, there was a distributor who bought the film, but the Grey Wolves basically threatened to firebomb any theater that was showing it, so he kind of pulled it out of distribution. It ended up on cable TV, but they edited it quite heavily. So the film has been distributed to like 40 countries around the world. It's won all sorts of prizes. It changed the nature of my career, for sure. Up until that time, I was kind of a darling of art house cinema, and I think a lot of critics were surprised with it because suddenly I was engaging on this very direct political issue, and people didn't quite know what to make of that. I'm furious at the accusations that it's propaganda, because propaganda by its nature is very blunt and simple-minded, and this film is anything but. It's
you
maybe,
argued a lot.
Yeah, it's maybe too complex. It's showing too many points of view. So it's not against. The thing that I look back on and I'm most resentful of and angry about is the reaction of certain Armenians, who just dismissed the film.
Those who had authority or a place in...
Just intellectuals. There was they really dropped the ball. I think that this is a film that it was meant to be actually talked about, and it has been talked about by all sorts of thinkers, academics. It's been embraced by, it's been seen by so many people. It was thankfully distributed by Miramax, who had an output deal with Disney. So the film got out in a massive way. It was incredible, the availability of the film. But to have certain, people in the Armenian academic world kind of, critique it, for really superficial, inconsequential, petty reasons, I found that infuriating. And to be honest, I lost a lot of friendships over that. People who I thought should have really stepped up to the plate and actually taken this film on for what it was proposing, not tell me what I should have done. That to me was aggravating. And it's the typical thing. When you make a film that's challenging, people will have all sorts of responses. But in this case, I expected full support from my own community because I knew that it would meet with resistance from the Turkish side.
Do you think about other genocide-themed movies or Armenian-themed movies? Do you jot down notes and...
Paul, people have asked me that a lot lately. I don't know what else I would say. I think I look at Ararat, I watch it, I go, I'm less open-minded than as I was. My film that I would make now would be a little bit angrier, and it wouldn't be as... I have to tell you a story. I've never mentioned this before. When we showed the film to Harvey Weinstein at Miramax, he insisted at the end I put in a title card that say, Turkey continues to deny the Armenian genocide of 1915. And I felt against the tone of the movie. And I felt that, obviously, by the time you watch this, you don't need that card. But I'm thankful that he did that now, because I'm realizing that film was very porous. It was I went really far in the character of Ali, who's playing Cevdet Bey, played by the brilliant actor Elias Koteas. I went really far in trying to position the Turkish point of view as well and make it sympathetic, empathetic. And that was because I was really open. I thought there would be dialogue as a result of that. I thought it would be embraced. If I knew that it would be met with the type of fury that it received in Turkey, and from my own community for other reasons, I probably wouldn't have made the film as interestingly as it is made. I probably would have been much blunter and simple-minded. And that, I think, what's unfortunate is that to this day, the most widely distributed film about the Armenian genocide is not a simple film. The first film that comes out of the, I shouldn't say that. There was Myrig, and there was certainly, I think Elie Kazan's America is essentially about the same historic event. And there's certainly been, from this country, Malyan's film.
And all the productions that are constantly going on now.
Nahabet, which is a brilliant film. And Nahabet is a brilliant film with Sos Sarkisian. I mean, so there have been other films, but this one got really wide international distribution, and it is interesting that it is such a complex film. It's not an introduction to the Armenian genocide by any means.
But then again, you are a complex filmmaker. It's never simple, and it's your brilliance is in that complexity that you bring. And now you're working on two different films simultaneously.
Yeah,
Let's talk about
which
those
are
films.
also complex. One is called Devil's Knot with Reese Witherspoon and Colin Firth, and that's about the story of the West Memphis Three. This is a true event that happened in Arkansas about 20 years ago. 3 8-year-old boys were found naked, bound, murdered and left in a swamp in Arkansas, and the town completely is destroyed by this. I mean, how could this happen to their children, and who could have done this horrible thing? And no obvious suspects appeared, and they needed to find a perpetrator. They couldn't just live with this evil, so they created these demons. These 17 and 18-year-old boys who were, outsiders maybe. One of them had a history of medical problems. They listened to thrash metal. They were goths. And they flirted with witchcraft. So it must have been a satanic, demonic activity. And they basically convinced everyone that was the case, and they were sentenced to death. One of them was. And it's an incredible story of a witch hunt. And to me, what's also interesting is that it's a courtroom drama without any resolution at all. It's almost Kafkaesque. You see all these, and I'm trying to be as even-handed as possible. And again, it's a very complex movie, but I think really strong. So we're going to premiere that at the Toronto Film Festival in September.
And you've got some names attached to it that we may recognize.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon playing the mother of one of the boys who was murdered. Colin Firth playing the private investigator who's working pro bono for the publicly appointed defense team, Stephen Moyer from First Blood, and all sorts of rising stars. So did Dane DeHaan, Murray Enos, Amy Rhines, if you're a fan of The Wire. So it's a pretty kind of star-studded cast, 80 speaking parts. And then I have my own film, which is a psychological thriller called Queen of the Night, though I'm thinking of changing the title to Captive. So one of those will be its title.
And what's this movie about?
It's basically about a child who's abducted, and the effects on the parents. The father left her alone in a car just for a minute when he went to get a pie. So he feels this tremendous sense of guilt. The mother can never forgive him for this, and every year on this girl's birthday, she goes to visit these detectives to see if there's any progress in the case. So it's really and then this girl, Cass, begins to emerge in this weird way through the internet. So they know that she's alive. They're not quite sure what her presence means, what she's doing. It's all very creepy. But ultimately, Cass, who's been held in captivity for 10 years by this monster, begins to design her own escape. So it's pretty interesting in terms of what's been happening lately in Cleveland and places like that, which is just pure coincidence. I think that, but I'm really excited about it. Ryan Reynolds is the father, and he gives a performance like he's never given before. So he's going to redefine himself with this.
Well, there are a lot of us waiting, with bated breath to see these new productions, and hopefully you'll bring them to Golden Apricot next year.
Yeah, for sure. I'll bring 2 films next year. Wouldn't it be cool?
Let's wrap this conversation up with how you see Hayastan progressing. I mean, from your time being involved here, shooting calendar, all the way through to now.
My God, from calendar days? I mean, I shot a lot of video of the city at that time, which I'm now going to probably try and find, because it was, well, that was the worst time. We shot calendar in 1992, so it was when there was no electricity, and it was very bleak, and the future was really, really bleak. So it's amazing to see the prosperity and just the energy of the city. To go to a place like Tumo, and it's like a dream come true. I was in tears as I walked in there, and just see this magnificent gift that Sam Simonian has given, and his wife have given us, and to see this huge building full of 14 to 17-year-olds who are learning the latest digital technology and buzzing with activity, and it's all so beautifully designed, and it's just you know, it's a dream come true. Like, how could we have ever imagined that the country would have something like this 20 years ago? But, you know, this is you know, it's a miracle we're still here. Historically, good God, we should have been wiped off the face of the earth a long time ago, but we're stubborn, proud, resilient people, and, you know, we are survivors, obviously, and I'm proud to be one of them.
And we're proud to have you in our CivilNet being among our leaders and visionaries who keep us on track and inspire us.
Thanks, Paul. That's
Thank
great.
you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time. Thank you for spending the hour, 2 hours here talking to the CivilNet team, and we're all enamored. And
well, I come every
you.
time. It's a great energy here too. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Atom. We'll look forward to seeing you next year at Golden Apricot. Thank you at home next time on CivilNet.